Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the I'll Try That podcast. This week we have a very special guest. We have JL, John Louis. JL's bringing his South African knowledge and coming in, and we're excited to chat because we haven't really chatted about South African beers at all, have we?
No, I can honestly say I've never tried a South African beer.
You've never had like a Super Bock or something like that?
Tell a lie, I've had a Super Bowl.
There you go. So you've had the token English South African beer. You get them in like Nando's here, which is our token South African restaurant.
Right.
So it's probably far from the real South African like experience of beers.
I haven't had a Super Bock.
No, exactly. So that's it. I think that's why we need you on to kind of give us insights into what's happening in the Safa beer world. Now obviously you live here in the UK, so what are you liking in the UK beer? We'll chat all through that at the moment, but I guess just welcome. Thanks for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It's
Appreciate
great.
it.
It's great having you on. It's great having you on. And you were saying this is the first podcast you've been on?
Indeed, especially talking about beer.
Yeah, it's a fun podcast to start off with, right?
There's definitely worse ones you could be doing.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be trying to solve true crime murders and stuff, But yeah. So, what are like the mainstream like South African beers that you'd get over there?
So actually, interestingly enough, there is a beer here which is a good South African beer. And it's brewed here and then shipped back to South Africa. It's called a Zulu Blonde, if you can get it.
I've not heard of it, actually.
I'd have to check exactly where you can get it. But so that's... I can't remember his name right now, but he started brewing it in KZN. And in SA, like I've told you, you either have to have a massive brewery...
Yeah.
Or the craft beer scene's like quite limited. So he was quite original in that he looked at options on how to brew on scale, and SAB or now AB InBev won't,
wherever they've chopped it up,
they won't brew your beer, they'll maybe buy your brand. So he looked into coming over here, and he was like one of the first guys I'd ever heard of doing basically gypsy brewing. So going to one of the big brewers here and with his recipe that he had done there, and it's called a Zulu Blonde, and started selling it here as well. Guys love it.
Yeah. Okay.
Lots of ex-South Africans here.
Yes.
And then ships it back to SA where he sells it. So he still owns the hotel and stuff where he has his small little brewery, but most of it's brewed here now. I
mean, that's ingenious. So he's perfected his recipe in SA, but he's come over to the UK to make it work, and then he ships it back to South Africa. I mean, that's, so what is it about the South African scene that it's not like suitable to set up a brewery and, like a craft brewery? You were saying it's not got a big craft beer scene. Yeah,
so, I mean, the craft beer scene kind of exploded there about, probably about 10, maybe 15 years ago. And I think the major issue is, and it was probably, his name was Richard, so it's probably what Richard found is like you basically could only get lager in SA. So there were a lot of homebrew clubs where guys would share their knowledge and brew
the real craft,
like real brew in your garage, like something different. And remember, obviously, we also went through apartheid, which meant we had no access. I mean, I was little at the time, but it's not something you think about until you're older. But that's probably also had an effect on why we only had lager for so long.
Okay.
And it's what the guys drank, it's what they sold, so it's what was brewed.
Yes, yeah.
So I think the same with Richard, like to do something different, you kind of had to brew it yourself.
Yeah.
And obviously, SAB at the time, they're definitely not going to help you brew at scale. And
potential competitor, right?
Yeah, I think the major issue actually is distribution, really.
Right.
Like brewing beer is one thing, but distributing it is another. And the whole licensing around beer is quite complex in South Africa. Okay. So if you get a license to brew, it's to a building. So this kind of goes into the whole craft beer scene and why it's complicated. So I have a little bit of a bugbear with craft beer in SA at the moment because they're all brewing lagers.
Yeah, okay. Lager is back.
Yeah. If we've learned anything, lager is coming back.
Exactly. So these guys, they're brewing other beers, but like what they're punting and what most of these guys, when they grow, is they just start brewing lager, which I think like
because that's what drinkers in South Africa are expecting, right?
It's what sells, right? So you got to pay the bills when you get to a certain scale. And so the thing with brewing in SA is if you have a license for a brewery, it's linked to a building, or to a premises. So first of all, you're limited with where you can brew. It has to be a light industrial area.
Okay.
And then once you get the license, it's normally attached to a building. So what often happens is guys start brewing, they invest their own cash. So obviously the building they get is normally quite small, right? And they think, when I grow, I'll grow into the space. But very quickly they start realizing your kind of neighborhood can, you can sell to your neighborhood like 10,000 liters of beer pretty easily, and that's not a lot of cash, and that's you brewing 24 hours a day. So now you're making no money. You link, and then they go, okay, well, we just need a bigger space. But then they realize, oh, hold on, my license was attached to the building, so it's not so easy for me to get another space to brew in.
So you can't just transfer a license to a new bigger space.
No,
so you're actually quite restricted in like scaling. So the entry could be quite quick. You can get a lot of little microbreweries, whatever. But then when you're starting to get to that next rung up, that next size, like trying to outside your neighborhood, the city over even,
so then investment starts becoming big because you have to actually have a lease. You've got to have quite a big premises. You have to probably pay lots of fees to have architects map it all out so that when you apply for your license, all that stuff's sorted. So you can see that jump from that kind of real craft beer scene to that next level of making it profitable is quite big. So to be honest with you, SAB or AB InBev, they've been quite supportive of the craft beer industry because I think they realize it's not ever really going to be major competition.
Yeah.
And the other issue with SA is, unlike the UK, it's really vast distances between places where you can sell. So when you look at a company like AB InBev or SAB, they're actually a logistics company. They're not necessarily a brewery, right? So
I was going to say, with that, because in England you can have these small breweries, but you can find them all over the UK. So you can have one brew down in Cornwall. You could even get it up in Scotland just because of the distance. We don't have to travel. So do you find in South Africa there's a lot of, I suppose, craft breweries, but only local to that area? So you might go to a town and they'll be like, I'll go and try so-and-so, and you'd be like, never heard of it.
Like Durban is like, I have Durban beers, but you'd never find it in like Pretoria or something.
Yeah. So 100%. So it's Zulu Brown that I mentioned earlier. You won't really get it outside of KZN, and almost not outside of the town he's in.
Right.
And I think it's mostly just logistics. So in some cases, so there's a weird little bridge, right? And I suppose, what's the brewery in the States? Old Samuel
Adams.
No. The Dogfish head.
Oh yeah. He was talking about
so he's permanently petitioned to change the law as to what classifies as a craft brewery because he's grown so much that he still wants to be classified as a craft brewery, but technically he's pretty big.
Sure. Yeah. Well, we talk about it all the time. There's so many different qualifications of what makes a craft brewer anymore, and even to the point where you can be massive craft brewer, but as long as 50% of your brewery is not owned by another brewery, that means you're still an independent craft brewer, which is like, hang on, how does that make any sense? You're making so much.
Doesn't work.
No. Sure.
Not that I'm bitter.
So in SA, there's only a few breweries that have kind of gone through the where you can find it everywhere across the country, but they'll only be in kind of major centers, and a lot of them piggyback on some other kind of way of sorting out the logistics. So there's either a specific company that they deal with that gets the beers to where they need to go, and they I think a fair portion of those are ironically in Cape Town, which is where I'm from. There are one or two in Joburg now that are starting to kind of, and to be fair, I haven't been there for a year and a half.
Yeah,
so
you've got enough coming trips
fast.
so you can see what's happening there.
I'll have a look. But in SA, like kind of the main breweries was that you could kind of buy everywhere was Devil's Peak, and Devil's Peak went through a patch where they employed a lot of ex-SAB guys, so they obviously got a lot of that knowledge in-house. Another guy, it's a guy called Wolfgang, he is German.
Yeah, sounds it.
And he actually brews unbelievable beer.
Yeah,
and
Germans know a thing or two about beer, don't
Yeah.
He's actually, so there aren't many master brewers in SA, and he's one of the independent ones. So he's not linked to, I think AB InBev have about 6. And
so will he go around like share his expertise with breweries and stuff then to help?
So he was part of like I brewed when the craft thing first started. I brewed at home, and I had this kind of idea at one point that I would set up something small and then my dad could do it. I'd kind of check it out from the outside, and actually Wolfgang was so you'll laugh, but our kind of homebrew society in the Western Cape was called the Southeasters.
Nice. I love that.
No, I've got a lot of time for that.
And it's named after, we have a very strong wind in Cape Town called the Southeaster.
Yeah.
So it's like notorious. So we were called the Southeasters. And actually Wolfgang was a massive member, and he was brilliant. Like he would help anyone. And like, I mean, obviously, I always said with beer, like I think when you're at AB InBev's level, it's science. Like you press a button and it kind of happens. Whereas I think with craft beer, I always said it's kind of a blend of art and science. So there's a science behind it, but there's a lot of creativity in it. And the thing with someone like Wolfgang is you kind of have this idea and you're making stuff up, but he knows like the science behind it, and he can really help you marry the two. And one of the other beers in SA, big breweries in SA, Devil's Peak that I mentioned earlier, the guy actually came out of the Southeasters, the main brewer. I mean, it's changed a lot since then, but he kind of started it and it evolved to this whole massive thing with investment. And
it sounds like I need to join a club with mine.
You do need to join your version of the Southeasters
down in Weymouth.
What would they be called in Weymouth?
Don't know. I've got to...
The Wet Hoppers?
The Wet Hoppers, yeah. Because my brewing is distinctly average. So,
it's at the starting point. Let's put it that way.
It's unique.
It's more ideas. You need a Wolfgang, basically.
Realise
your ideas.
Not just me and my flat.
Yeah. So he made a chili beer, which is there might be a market for it. Who knows?
Yeah. It was stronger than anticipated.
Yeah, on the chili front.
On the chili front, yeah.
Well, one of the first beers I brewed, I called it Dog Breath.
There was definitely a market for dog breath. Yeah.
So original. I mean, that would have sold.
Yeah, no.
Absolutely. You'd have a cult following behind dog breath before you do it. That's amazing.
It sounds like one of the things all the old boys would order in their bar. I'm like, pint of dog breath, please. Hairs on your chest.
Oh my God.
That was great.
And then, so you were saying like distribution, right? So obviously you got your areas, and obviously there's a lot of bars and restaurants. You get to build a network with that. But when you're thinking kind of, I guess, on like a national level across SA, are there like supermarket chains that are in every place? So if you were to get your bottled or canned beers into said supermarket chain, you then can spread out like you can here in the UK. Like Rich was saying, you're a Cornish brewer. You get in with like Tesco's, you're probably stocked in most of the country.
Up and down the country.
Yeah, like I think the real challenge with SA is that the market's like so much smaller than the UK. I mean, you realise that when you kind of move here. Like, although it seems big and stuff, like it's really small. So, for instance, like you have 4 supermarket chains that you can maybe get into. And only a couple of those will probably stock independent beer, for instance.
Oh, okay.
So, and even if you get in with them, I think the relationships can be quite complicated. So some of them will want you to handle your own distribution. Some of them you can piggyback maybe on their distribution. Okay. And even then, I think they limit it. Like, so obviously I'm talking just pure business, but there's a whole layer in SA which is very complicated, which I alluded to apartheid earlier, and it's called Black Economic Empowerment.
Okay.
So you'll probably find there's a lot of middle companies now that handle logistics. Mm-hmm. So you probably got to kind of piggyback on those, and you'll find in each region they're different. So it's complicated. Okay. So I think like SA guys are very entrepreneurial and resilient. Yeah. Like they're creative around solving those problems, but they do exist. And I think it's not like here where like you'll go to like even if you went to a major shopping center that had a massive selection, it would be tiny compared to like if you go to Tesco's. I mean, if I go to Tesco's down the road and look at beer selection, it's just crazy in my mind to see how many beers are there. Yeah. Like I'd have to go to a specialty liquor store in SA that are known for stocking a wide variety of beers, and I don't know what the kind of back end complications are to them stocking those, but it
must be a lot of their own like relationships getting those beers brought in, like doing the research, doing the grunt work basically to get those in.
A fair amount. And I mean, I alluded to it earlier, guys are only drinking lagers, so why would they, like if you're a profitable business and you're trying to make cash, why would you stock dark beer or IPAs or something different? And like something that has always blown my mind, I always wanted to try it when I came here, was a sour beer. The only other one I ever tasted was Devil's Peak made one like as an off thing that they did. It was ridiculously expensive. It came in a champagne bottle, but I just had to taste it.
A real pomp and circumstance.
It was awesome. And then I came here, and where we live, like in Tunbridge Wells, like there's Fuggles bar. Just going there and just seeing how many beers on tap, and there were at least 5 sour beers on tap.
Those sours are so... I mean, you've got a whole brewery of Vault City that only makes sours, experimental sours, that's it. And you can get them up and down the country. And that, to your point, though, that's like crazy, because it's not a sour beers for me wasn't really something I'm really that interested in. When I was in the States, they were quite popular, but I was like, I don't really get it. They're too sour for me. Whereas coming here, like sour's like one of my favorite drinks now, you know, because there's such a variety of different flavors and palettes, you know, that you can have with sours. I
find it's like eating those sour worms. Like you can only have a few, and then like you're going, no.
I don't think I'd get like through a 6-pack.
No.
Well, it was some of the stuff we were trying at the craft beer festival last year in London. There were some absurd sours that were just like...
I think it felt like everyone had a sour.
Everyone had a sour,
as well, actually, which kind of showed it was the year of the sours. Maybe everyone had sour.
It was that raspberry donut one. Raspberry donut sour, and that was like genuinely tasted like a donut, which was the really impressive part. But that one was too much. But
oh, that's wild.
But it's interesting you say about lager, because obviously we're talking about lager not on like the macro level. Obviously, lager's always been the most popular beverage, you know, beer-wise around the world in pretty much every country, apart from when you go to like Nigeria, where it's like Guinness, you know. That's it. But it's like it's amazing. It feels like SA. Again, obviously you got the collapse of SAB Miller as well, which was like a huge hit to the, you know, to what you were saying, like an outflux of, you know, skilled jobs just had to dissipate, and it spurred on a craft beer movement a bit more, I guess, in SA because of it, because we felt that obviously in most places as well, like where the UK obviously still Carling and Foster's are the number 1 and 2 sold beers in the UK, and they're just staple mass lagers. And yet you've still got a fledgling, like growing and if not very powerful craft beer. Craft beer, again, what is a craft beer in quotation marks? But, you know, you've got a lot of variety now still. You know, a lot of these kind of more established. I mean, we've got on the table here Salt, we've got Beavertown, we've got Northern Monk, you know, you name Vocation. You know, we've got a whole variety of breweries that have been around now for maybe 6 or 7 years minimum that have made themselves like a national favourite. You know, you can find them up and down. And I think that... And I don't see us going away from that. I feel like, you know, that's here to go. I mean, a lot of people talk about, we're saturated with choice now, blah, blah. your experience that you were just saying, coming from a South Africa supermarket to like a UK one and going, this is a huge selection. I had that exact moment when I went to Finland, because those guys are very sophisticated in quotation. They have a very mature drinking market, because like you go into their supermarkets, it's like, you know, we maybe have one like section of an aisle in Tesco's that has a load of beers. They've got both double sides. It's all these different kind of beers, and it's not just beer. It's like different types of drinks. You know, like long drinks, which are like kind of a cocktail, but it can't. You know, it's different, but it's just so many different types of variety, and I think it doesn't mean that it's going away that we've got these craft beers. I think they're just settling into what this next level of, like, it's no longer just a quirky thing just to have, outside of a Foster's, but it's staples that are here to stay. I don't know. What do you think, Jazz?
No, I completely get that. We get ever increasing and ever wonderful alcoholic beverages that are now catering to not just your hardcore ale drinker that would be in a pub sort of thing. Like we've got not a craft pub, we've got an ale house near my flat in Weymouth that is strictly old boys who wouldn't stray anything other than a bitter sort of thing. But now the market is out there for younger people. You're looking at younger and younger people are drinking more and more exotic and more crazy beers out there, which I'm there for. I like it.
Have you got latched onto any beers here in the UK that you're a fan of?
So I mean, even before I came, we are obviously been following beers for a long time.
Of course.
Like a beer I've always admired here is the Colonel, the brewery.
Yeah.
And we've I had a mate who actually had a. I mean, he still has it, I think. He's a very low-key brewing label in SA. And he brewed very bespoke stuff, limited edition. He was an engineer by day.
Yeah. So
he didn't need it as a job. So it was never going to be a full-time job. But he had a really good brewery set up. And he would sell very limited editions. And I just really loved that thinking. I loved that... So I'm a graphic designer, so I've gone through the whole phase of kind of everything initially being print, and then it was digital's going to kill everything.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we're in a funny space at the moment where print's far from dead. And guys want really bespoke, cool stuff. It has its place, and it has its kind of following. I think that's something really difficult to do in SA, unless you kind of in skulk situation. It's very difficult to be able to do that. Guys are generally trying to quit their day jobs and make it something where they can earn a living off it. Yeah. Whereas here, I think it's much easier because the market's so much bigger. Even if you have marginal success with it or you have a really cult following, you can have an amazing kind of beer and actually live off it. As long as you're not wanting to kind of own a mansion in Notting Hill or something.
True.
And if you want to have a good life and do something rad and do something you're happy with, so I think that opportunity exists so much more here. And that's what I've always admired about the Colonel, right? He's kept everything really independent, and he's really done what he digs. I mean, his labels are terrible.
Yeah.
They're functional. Yeah. And I still, when we go out, I still always have a Colonel.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're great beers.
Got exposed to kind of Brewdog as well in SA because they did a collab with Devil's Peak at one point.
Yeah, okay.
And the same kind of thing. He's a real pariah in some senses, or the business is a real pariah. It's set up. It's like anti-establishment, and I think originally craft brewing in my head was always kind of don't accept what's on the shelf. You can have what you want to have. We're going to give you choice and real choice, and that's kind of why I'm disappointed with a lot of the lager shift in SA with craft breweries, because some of them were brewing amazing stuff. There is still a guy in Cape Town. It's some of the best beer in the world. He trained in the States, and he's got this kind of very simple idea of how he wants his life to be, and he's managed to build this little business brewing just absolutely phenomenal beer. And I think there's just so much of that here, which is awesome. So I've always been kind of partial to a brew dog.
Yeah.
If I recognize that, like it's wild, you can pick it up at Tesco's.
Get it everywhere.
But yeah, it's such a massively. So I really enjoy Fuggles or that kind of shop because it allows me to kind of go in, and I know at least it's semi curated.
Yeah.
So it means I can go in and I'm trying really interesting stuff, but like the amount of it is just massive. I mean, for me to recognize and to really see the difference. I think here you have the privilege of going like, I like dark beer.
Yes.
So I'm going to try all the dark beer, and I don't even have to have a save. I don't even have to have a favorite. Yeah. I just have to have a style I like, right? And I can go and find as much as I want. And even if I travel into Europe, like it just opens up even more, right? Like you don't have that luxury in SA. Like
it's lager or bust, basically.
You might like a dark beer, but you'll have it when you find it. But actually, ironically, I've always said AB InBev brew the best dark craft beer in the world. And it's called a Castle Milk Stout. So if you ever are in South Africa, it is an unbelievable dark beer, like which I'm quite partial to. But it really is good. I mean, I definitely supported their cause with that beer. So if you ever get a chance, try it.
I've heard of this Castle Milk Stout.
It's really
people have
good.
really talked how good it is, actually. So this is definitely something we have to hunt out and find. Is it popular anywhere else? Is it just South Africa, do you think?
I must check. I can't say I've seen it anywhere else.
Well, I haven't come across it, but I'm sure we could go online and find someone who would who would sell it in the UK or get it to us here. We've definitely got to try that.
I'm not a fan of a milk stout.
No, you don't like a milk stout, but I do like a milk stout. But you like Guinness, and it's not a milk stout, but it's like it's that's your entry into the dark beer world, isn't it? You know.
I think what was the last one I tried was the one we got from Badger Brewing.
Yes,
that was a oat milk stout.
That was oat milk stout, and they don't usually make dark beers. I think you've got to go with someone who knows it. You've got to go with someone who knows how to make this.
They normally roast barley, right, to get that darkness. So oats is quite weird.
Yeah, it was
wasn't it? I think they were trying to tap on an oat milk scene.
It was an acquired taste. It was a.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think I'm going to definitely try a milk stout. I think that's great. And again, we talked about at the start, Super Bock, but it's probably not even South African. It's probably like
never
Nando's
heard of it.
It's Nando's, the restaurant.
Yeah,
in
100%.
The UK is a fast food chain in South Africa, but they've pitched it here in the UK as like all about Portugal and Portuguese and blah blah blah. I don't know if that's the same thing, but
so Nando's started in SA, and it 100% the whole thinking behind it is this kind of Portuguese hot chicken. But it was started by a Jewish guy.
I didn't know that.
And it really is. So in SA, it's really a fast food chain, but it's actually so expensive here. But I haven't heard of Superbock. I must definitely.
It's like the staple lager. It's pitched as the South African lager, you know. So, and I've never seen it outside of Nando's. You know, I think
I'd be interested to know where they brew it because that would be
exactly.
I think it's occasionally on special in the middle aisle at Lidl.
Oh, is it?
So
really?
I was in Superbock. I think that's where I last drank it. Was when there was an offer there.
We'll have to go check it out, find some because I would.
So what is amazing with Nando's is like he's always punted SA. Like he always wants SA on a global stage. He's a massive supporter of arts. So he's always all the art normally you see in Nando's is local guys that he's found and he's giving them a chance to kind of using his platform to give them exposure. So I wouldn't be surprised actually if Superbock was brewed in SA, but it was maybe some kind of small brewery that he's giving a chance to.
It's certainly got them popular here because I mean it's the only. I was looking in Tesco's before because I was like, let's try and see if I can get some South African beers, and obviously that's nothing. You know, I was like hoping for something, but I will look out for was it Zulu Blonde? You said as well.
Let's have a look for Zulu Blonde. That's really good. good
That sounds
beer.
incredible.
So that I would say is more like a pale ale. So
I mean,
Okay.
right
So,
up our
yeah.
street.
Yeah.
Try that one
Yeah.
out. That sounds awesome.
which you can tell why he never sold an SA, right?
Yeah. Just funny. I just think like, even like the lager drinkers, they're like a pale ale kind of, done right. But
Yeah,
hey, they're stuck with their thing,
Actually, like the thing with lager that blows my mind is South Africa is just really not the best place to brew it. I mean,
Yeah.
because everything about it is cold, like the whole way it's brewed, to stored, etc. It's a whole cold chain, which is obviously it's from Germany where it's from. Like it makes sense
Yes,
to brew it there. I've just never understood. Like SA is so hot, why they brew it there? But
Well, obviously it needs, and also as you said, go back to the science of brewing. You need to change how you're brewing it for the climate of you're brewing in, and so that must be also its own difficult task. Not to mention, like you said, the logistics, getting the ingredients that you need week in, week out. And then you were telling me about rolling blackouts, and that a whole different thing. That's just wild to me. The fact that the power just goes down.
I mean, I don't know how guys are actually, especially breweries. I mean, they must have their own power supply of some sort, because you can't have your mash turning off halfway through.
No.
So,
but it's so like part of the fabric now that these rolling blackouts happen. My friend was telling me that he gets like alerts to say when a rolling blackout's happening.
there's brilliant. Like I said, SA is full of incredible entrepreneurs. There's apps now.
Yeah.
So you can have an app and you just put in your area and it will literally tell you when you're going to have blackouts, and
That's just.
it works off the system.
I was
So
going to say the closest I can relate to that at the moment is certain energy companies are asking people in England to turn their power off for certain amounts of time and you'll get some money back.
Yeah. Okay.
And, yeah, someone got 13p when they sat in darkness for 2 hours. It just, I'm not going to lie, like I'm not going to do that.
well, the irony is you're still paying full electricity prices in SA with the privilege of them turning it off.
Turning it off.
It's wild.
13p.
I don't know how
that's
guys
nice.
are running. Like I mean, it must be affecting smaller breweries, even like microbreweries. They must be affected by it.
What you're saying, they've got to find their own power sources, and that is no cheap endeavour to find your own
No,
power
yeah.
source.
No,
right?
heating mash tuns not. It's going to draw massive amounts of power, right?
There's only so much. I mean, solar can do only so much, and you're storing it up. It must be a nightmare. Added complexity to already a very complex procedure, which is to brew good beer.
It must be, yeah. It's probably going to have to be some kind of generator or something guys are running, but then it's fuel costs, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it all affects ultimately the
And then
price
the end
of
price
beer.
of it, exactly. And then if you're brewing something like a sour that people aren't naturally going to go,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
then it-
I'm just going to brew lager and make some money.
I can see why they're doing it, right? Scared by the bottom line. Jack, honestly, this has been great. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting to us about this, because this is a whole open my eyes to how easy we have it here, right?
It's so much easier to buy beer, yeah? And the best beer is Guinness, by the way. No, I'm joking.
Yeah. Do you like it? Do you have a favourite beer? Or is there one that's your like go to? Obviously, you've talked about Colonel. You talked about Dogfish. Head.
So I drink a lot of Brewdog, if I'm honest,
Yeah.
because it's quite readily available.
Yeah.
And like I do like Guinness,
Yeah.
and I really loved it until I went to Ireland and I had it there, and then came back here, and it really doesn't taste the same.
No, it's the Irish Guinness. I've been to St James's Gate. I've been to Mecca, as it were. I've been taken it from the taps from there. It is unbelievable.
It's
in
weird.
Dublin.
It's really like I had a jam and I couldn't tell you what the difference was, but there was just the difference. I've slowly started drinking it again because it has been about a year, just over a year since I went to Ireland, so maybe I've forgotten a little.
Yeah.
I like a dark beer, so
Well, we've just done it. It'll come out actually before this one, but we've done an updated Guinness episode because there's quite a lot of Guinness innovation that's happened recently. Like their 0.0, which you hated.
charges and stuff.
Yeah,
Just didn't like that.
0.0 was awful.
But you were comparing two like for like, and
Yeah.
they're like different, obviously. And then we had the Nitro Surge,
yes, yeah.
which I've got that, and I've saved a can for you to try actually later
Nice.
on, and it is brilliant.
That's
It is as a home brewer, like home version of Guinness. It is much better because we tried the stout that you could buy in cans, and then I tried it against the Nitro Surge, and the Nitro Surge was like hands down so much better.
So actually, that I went to my mate who lives in Ireland, also a Safa.
Yeah.
And he had the Nitro Surge at home, and you charge with a USB, and I was like, "Oh, it's so cool!" Like, and I was like, "Jeez, it's amazing."
That's also just the element that you're charging up as a little device. We like that kind of like a bit of beer with a bit of tech, like low key tech. Love it.
Men are very easy to please.
Yeah, exactly. They know what they're doing to market to us.
Just any pageantry.
Yes. I'm going to start just putting sparklers in my beer.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, that's fab. Anything? Last words, anyone?
No.
That's good. Just thanks very much for coming on. This has been great.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. And that's all we have time for in this week's episode of the I'll Try That podcast. And so from me, Joe,
Rich,
Barber, and Simo.
Goodbye. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram,
Twitter, I'll try that podcast.com.
And watch us on YouTube.
Goodbye now.